Welcome to another edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be having a second conversation with author Erik Dreiling. Erik, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure, absolutely. We're talking about the third entry in the Fractured Timeline Now trilogy, and that is
Yes.
Operation Viper's Den. At this point, what have you been able to explore as you've embarked on this third entry?
Well, a lot of research went into this one, in particular with ghost towns,
Mm-hmm.
because a good part of the book it takes place in the 1940s in an Arizona ghost town. And for this particular one, um, I decided I wanted to give the town its own personality because I learned as a writer that not just characters, drive the story, but it could be locations too. So I wanted to create for this one because it's also the final entry in the series. I wanted to put my own stamp on it, and I wanted to make something memorable for it. So each entry has its own unique thing that people, would remember about it. I wanted the ghost town to be that memorable thing for this story.
Nice, nice. We talked last time about some of that, like pacing in action
Mhm.
and crafting action scenes. So I love what you're saying there about kind of an enriching setting as well. And I imagine that jumping through time, I imagine that there was a research component to that also.
Oh yeah, a lot of index cards and like little, almost like that's like the conspiracy theory meme. We have the guy on the white with the whiteboard and all the strings connecting. It is like that,
Yeah.
just to make sure, because there's actually a part in Operation Viper's Den that revisits a scene from Operation Twilight Hawk, the second one, but it's told from another character's perspective. So it's kind of like Back to the Future 2, where Marty and Doc go back to 1955 and they see the events of the first movie playing out from a different
Hmm.
perspective. It's like that. So that was it was actually very challenging to write because I didn't want to get it like way off the mark. I had it established in the second one, and then the third one, it sounds completely off. So I actually had to go back to my notes for the second book and go, okay, this is how I framed the scene. This is how I want to frame it over here. So there was a lot of meticulous planning just to get the details right.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. You kind of have to step out of your own space, right? And the
Yes,
initial vision and then reimagine.
definitely. And that also challenged me as a writer too, because it's not just each one is a new story. In a way, it is, but also you're dealing with time travel. You kind of at one point have to go back and kind of visit what was, and you want
Hmm.
to get those right. So science fiction readers, they will pick up on that right away. They'll be like, "Hey, in the first book you did this, but in the second one, it's yeah." I wanted
Yeah.
to avoid that as much as possible, so it's like take my time with this one.
Yeah. Yeah. How have these characters kind of sat with you? How have you grown with them, moving from one volume to now a trilogy? And I guess we can apply that to setting as well. What's it been like to kind of get invested in this world in that way?
Well, it's taken me altogether about 5 years to write this trilogy, and in that time, you spend a lot. I spent a lot of time with these characters, of course, and finishing up the story. It was kind of like saying goodbye in a way because you've done what you can for the story. You've told their story. You've made sure you got their words down perfectly, their actions, and it's kind of like moving on a little bit. So there's a big part of me right now because I'm working on a new project where I find myself going back, like thinking back to those characters, like, gee, like that'd be cool if I could have this character. And it's like, oh man. So you actually, as a author, you really do end up missing some of your characters. So it's especially for me, it's Master Sergeant McDaniel and Dr. Cade because they were the main characters.
Hmm. Hmm.
So having finished the trilogy, it's like, man, it was such a blast, right? Especially McDaniel was such a blast writing his character.
Yeah, yeah. A 5 year span. So,
Mhm.
in addition to growing the setting, growing the characters, I imagine that you've grown a lot too. What are some things that you now know about yourself as a writer that you were just discovering 5 years ago?
Um, Mostly how I descriptive voice. I
Yep.
don't want to spend too much time on any given description. You want to give enough for the reader to create the image in their mind, and then you keep the story going. In the beginning, I struggled a lot with that because I felt like I had to put everything into one sentence. And after Operation Silent Serpent was published, I actually had a couple of meetings with Kyle Hanna, and we discussed that. And he's like, here are some tips you can do. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be descriptive, but you can be overly descriptive, and it can actually slow the pacing. So you want to find that balance. So he and I had quite a few meetings on that, and then I took what I learned from him and I applied it towards the second and third book. So it's knowing where to be like meticulously descriptive. And with me, that's character movements, like facial expressions. If I really want to drive home, like, hey, this character doesn't trust or this character suspects something, that's where I want to put my focus on. So
Mhm.
as an author, it's knowing where to be descriptive and where and when to keep the story going.
Well, yeah, yeah. I also have to give you props at this point because there are lots of people out there who say, "Oh, one day I'm going to write a book. One day I'm going to write a book." And I can't remember the exact percentage of people that actually publish or find a publisher, but it's pretty small in comparison to the number of people that do that or that say that. And I imagine that number kind of dwindles coming back to the second book, the trilogy, the follow-up. So kudos to you for persisting in that. What does that feel like to have accomplished that at this point?
It's fulfilling, for lack of a better word. It's quite fulfilling because I started out with just Operation Silent Serpent. I had an idea of where I wanted to take the story, but I didn't know if I was actually going to be able to have the opportunity to carry it, all the way through to the end. And fortunately, with Jumpmaster Press, I was able to do that. Um, it's still like there's a part of me that still doesn't quite believe it, because I think back because these stories have lived in my head for so long,
Mhm.
and to now know that the adventure is over, it's the story's been told, it's ready to go out there in the world and others can enjoy it and comment on it. And I'm just glad that I was actually able to achieve it's actually a lifetime goal of mine, childhood goal. And wanted to be an author. And it took me quite a long time to do it, about 25 years altogether.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah. I've tried before when I was younger. I wasn't quite ready. Looking back on it then, I wasn't quite ready. But yeah, it, it's
yeah.
it's a great feeling. So,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the process and love to emphasize that. So it's definitely not a just add water, overnight success, overnight
mhm.
accomplishment kind of work. So again, hats off to you. Um, anything from this trilogy that is kind of still sitting with you that you're thinking through, a kind of a special moment in the process or the story, uh, and then I guess on the other side of that anything that you hope is resonating with readers as they encounter this third volume.
um, well, I do hope that those who have followed the story since book one, that they understand the situation that Dr. Cade was in, where she was this scientist working on groundbreaking research, and all of a sudden, all these people show up out of nowhere, these mercenaries and other scientists from like the future and all this, and she's pulled into this chaotic, crazy situation, and she's having to adapt on the fly. So it's a lot of kind of like what I went through with other things in my actual life, where a lot of things changed at one time and I had to adapt. And I remembered when I was writing her character, like, how did I feel at the time? Like, when these crazy changes were happening to me, how did I feel? How did I respond? How do I wish I would have responded? And then I just took those ideals and then I just kind of channeled them into her character development. So hopefully there's something that the readers can relate to with that. You know, like, hey, I remember when this crazy thing happened to me, I reacted the same way. And so there is a theme in the second book, Operation Twilight Hawk, about reconnecting with someone you thought you lost a long time ago. So that was actually quite challenging in itself because I wanted to capture just the right feeling for it. So hopefully the readers, pick up on that. They appreciate it. They can relate to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we talk about what's next and what's on the horizon, I have one more kind of craft question for you. And
Yes.
it deals with that, like bringing real life details, kind of process, but also balancing that with the historical pieces, and the science fiction elements. You have a couple of ingredients here. So any tips for how you managed all of those moving pieces?
My approach to it, which would also be my advice for any other author out there attempting to do something similar with their stories, is do your homework. Um, don't rush the research because you're in. I know we're all in a hurry to get back to telling our story, but we wanted to give our story. We don't want to do it justice. You know, we don't want to
Mhm.
unintentionally insult our audience. So take the time with the research. Um, know when to apply the historical aspects and when to kind of move into the fictional aspects of it. And for me, that was another challenge because sometimes I get hung up on just the historical that I almost lost track of the story. So it's again, it's balance. Balance is a word that I use a lot when I talk about writing, because you got to know when to focus on this area, and then you got to know when to move over to another, you know, part of the story. So it it would be balance. Like I said, there's no other way to put it. So it's rewarding though because you actually end up when you're done, if you do it right, you can actually walk away with learning something that you had no idea. Like with my research, without giving too much away, for Operation Viper's Den, I researched the Old West.
Mhm.
And I didn't know, for example, that in a town that didn't have a church, that the saloons were often used as the impromptu church for Sunday services. And I didn't know that. I'm like, that is too cool to ignore. I'm going to figure out a way to put that into the story.
Yeah.
So I that's where some of the joy comes in when you're researching. You think, oh my God, that's going to be so slow and tedious. But when you get into it, it's like, dude, I can use that for the story. It could actually help with me a few times, writer's block. Like I was
Mm.
stuck and I didn't know how to progress the story. And having researched for this ghost town that I put into book three, I was like, oh my God, they can do this, and it just opens up possibilities. So my advice is to, take your time, enjoy the process, learn a thing or two and see how it can help move your story along.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Your shirt says you can never have too much something. So with that
Oh,
idea,
you can never have too much muscle. It's a car shirt.
nice, nice. Um,
Yeah.
with that idea, what's next for you? What would you like to say about what you're tackling next without giving anything away that you don't want to
Oh,
reveal yet?
oh, not a problem. My next project is something completely different from military sci-fi, and this is another way to challenge myself as an author. I am working on a paranormal thriller,
Cool, cool.
and taking what I've learned from, the writing process from Fractured Timeline, I'm applying it to this new project and starting this one from the ground up with that, those experiences. It really helped me figure out, okay, finding character voice, setting the story's tone, pacing. Um, Again, learning to enjoy the research because I'm having to do quite a bit of research, for like, people who say that they're psychics and, going on paranormal investigations. That plays a huge role into this story I'm working on. So I wanted to get that part right. Kind of like with the military sci-fi, everything else, suspend, disbelief for a little while, but you want to get the technical aspects of the military correct. With this
Yeah.
book, I want to get like the how do people like do these investigations? How do they interview people? Stuff like that. I wanted to get those parts correct. So um I will be submitting it to Jumpmaster Press soon and see and hopefully they enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed, writing it, and we'll see when it gets out there.
Yeah, yeah. Glad to have you back to talk about that one as well, and looking forward to seeing how you craft in that world.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting for sure because, like I said, I'm stepping way outside my comfort zone. And again, I give Kyle Hanna credit for that bit of advice because I asked him, he kept saying, challenge yourself. And I got frustrated. I said, how? How do I challenge myself? He's like, okay, you write military sci fi. I said, yeah. He's like, okay, write something different. Can
Yeah.
Erik Dreiling write a romance? And I went, oh, he's like, okay, okay. Can you? And then a thriller came up. He's like, can you write a thriller? I'm like, well, maybe. I'm like, oh. So I got to the wheels, were turning a little bit, and I got to thinking about it, and it's like, well, I'm always interested in the paranormal, those stories. So wonder if I can pull that off. So when I finally understood what he meant by challenge yourself as an author, then everything else kind of clicked into place, and it's like, okay, I get it. So
Oh,
I'm like I said, I'm very excited with this project, and there is something else I want to put out for Fractured Timeline in case some of my readers didn't know. We did a complete redesign of the first two book covers to kind of celebrate the release of Operation Viper's Den. Gene Rowley and I went back to the drawing board, so to speak. We looked at the book covers for the first two, and we're like, they can be better. We can do better. So we went back. We thought about, okay, what would be something attention grabbing? And Gene told me once that you have from the time you hand the book to the prospective, reader, you have about 3 seconds
mm-hmm.
to get them on the hook, or they set it down and they move on to the next. And so these cover designs, they can find them at jumpmasterpress.com. And uh, like I said, to help celebrate the release of Operation Viper's Den, we went back and we did a complete redesign of Operation Silent Serpent, and we did a slight title tweak. First, it was just Twilight Hawk, but to fit with the theme of the military, and the first book had the subtitle Operation on it, and so does the third, but the second didn't. So like, you know what, we need to I need to fix that. So it's going to be Operation Silent Serpent, Operation Twilight Hawk, and Operation Viper's Den. It's just nice, neat, and clean. It's going to look great in the new box set when that comes out. I know Gene right now is working on the design for the box. So the box set should be out soon.
Well, cool.
Um, and then the last thing I wanted to add, another interviewer asked me this question, and I felt like I didn't give a good enough answer for it. And I was really thinking about that question is, what do you think draws people to like military sci-fi or science fiction in general? And to
Mhm.
me, it's the possibility of what could be. It's picking up this book and like, oh my God, that'd be so cool if we actually had one of these things one day. Or um, could we really, like achieve instantaneous transportation, like teleportation, I think Star Trek was a huge influencer on science fiction because when people got engaged with those stories, They had the tricorder, and then you say on screen, you had like voice commands, and this was back in the 60s.
Yeah.
So people back then were wondering that would be so neat if we had that. And I think that sense of curiosity and excitement carries through, not to
Hmm.
just military sci-fi, but to like sci-fi in general. So I do believe that's what draws people to those kind of stories. It's just knowing what could be and getting excited over it. And um, I wanted to be able to replicate that as much as possible with Fractured Timeline. I want someone to pick up that book and go like, "Oh my God, that'd be so cool if we had that." Because DARPA actually back, and this is another part of my research too. DARPA has this thing called smart bullets. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
I have not.
They actually made them in 2014. They have these little processors installed in the bullet casing, where when fired, it can actually slightly change its trajectory. So if it's shooting like this, it can slightly go up or down. And when I came across that, I went, "Dude, that's perfect." Like
Yeah.
that. I feel like perfect's even like a poor choice of word, to describe the excitement I felt because working on the last book, Operation Viper's Den. Um, I wanted to give it a stronger like sci-fi flavor, so to speak. And I'm like, there's got to be something, but that sense of excitement's got to come from something that can be or that is.
Yeah.
And when I read the smart bullets, I'm like, there you go. It's right there. So yeah, it's like I said, enjoy the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Keeps the imagination primed.
Definitely.
I also, going back to your point about the book design and kind of the changes you've made there, I appreciate your attention as the writer there. And I also know that Jumpmaster is invested in that. They do a lot with book design and they're very thoughtful about that. So
Yes.
glad to see that side of the process as well.
Yes. They actually, author has final say because the way we do it is we'll have a sit down over Zoom between like Gene and the author. And then he'll ask them, okay, well, what are your ideas? And so we'll bounce ideas off of him. And if it gets to be, I guess, what they call too busy, where there's so much happening on the cover at one point, he'll catch that and go, okay, hey, it's a good idea, but we got to kind of dial it back a little bit. Let's focus
Mhm.
on this instead of that. And with my covers, he had this idea with the titling, where Operation Silent Serpent is this bright orange, like a orange is like red color, and then Operation Twilight Hawk it gets slightly darker, and then Operation Viper's Den it's really dark. So that was supposed to signify the evolving story, the
Mhm.
stakes that are higher than ever, and so the way he explained it to me, if I can get it right, because he said it much better than I could, but it subconsciously, when the reader picks up on it and they flip through the pages and they see that titling, it already kind of puts in their mind, hey, this is serious. This is, they're worse off than the first book or the last book. And it's like one of those like subconscious um, things. So I really hooked onto that idea. I'm like, I latched onto it. I'm like, yeah, that's great. We got to do it. So, like I said, Gene Rowley, he does great work with the book covers. So I
Yeah.
am absolutely proud of how uh, the stories, came along. The book covers, everything, the whole process. It's been nothing short of wonderful.
Cool, cool. May it continue.
Thank you.
And where can readers find out more? Where can they follow along with your creating, check out the books and other such things?
Yes, I'm mostly active on Facebook. I do have a TikTok. Admittedly, it's not updated as much as it could be. I just never fully got into TikTok, but there I am under that sci-fi guy 81. And then Facebook, easy find, Erik Dreiling, author. And every few days, I'm always updating, content, whether it's a segment that I started called Behind the Book, where I share a little bit of the writing process, some of the ideas that were expanded on, or some of the ideas that were scrapped from each book. Of course, I'm actively promoting Jumpmaster Press and my fellow Jumpmaster authors. So I always make sure that we all get the recognition. Um, but yeah, like I said, every like 3 to 5 days, I'm putting something new on there, and easy to find. That's why I didn't want anything fancy with the title. It was something simple and direct.
Cool. Have we missed anything in the question order or anything like
Mm,
that that you want to make sure to tackle? I appreciated the addition of the question of what draws people because that's always interesting to me too.
Um, Not that I could think of. I mean, I think we've, covered everything,
Cool, cool.
pretty good.
All
And
right.
like I said, with the science fiction, that with that one question when he asked me, it's like after the interview, I was thinking, man, I could have answered that so much better. And the perfect answer popped into my after the camera stopped.
Yeah,
I stood
yeah.
up, I had a cup of coffee, and I thought to myself, I'm like, why didn't I say that instead? And so I wanted to make a point when I came onto your show. It's like I want to, mention that to your audience. So
Glad you did. Glad you did. The invitation is always open. I'm glad that you're out there creating, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next.
thank you. I always enjoy coming onto your show. So I'm looking forward to doing it again.